This Saturday marks 115 years since the deadliest avalanche in United States history happened here in Washington. The disaster devastated a small town near Stevens Pass back in 1910.
And that tragedy created an unexpected bridge to a deeper glimpse of the past. As Black History Month comes to a close, Fox 13's Frankie Thompson shares how the storm is connected to one person who lived through our nation's founding years.
In the last days of February 1910, blizzards in the Cascade Mountains trapped two trains on the tracks near the small town of Wellington, Washington. Passengers and mail workers on board tried waiting out the storm, but on March 1st, an avalanche swept them away, killing 96 people.
There are pictures of people bringing down wrapped bodies in sleds.
One of them was a man named Louis George Walker. His remains pictured in a 1910 article about the victims written for the Everett-Herald, now kept in the archives at Everett Public Library, where Lisa Labovich is the history specialist.
He was, I think, the personal steward to the superintendent that was on the train. So he was an important staff member to him. He personally assisted him. He was on his personal car. He was someone who had a pretty high status job.
A status that allowed Walker to be laid to rest at the Evergreen Cemetery, among some of the most prestigious in the region. Walker's granite headstone, engraved forever as a man of God killed at Wellington, Washington. But this story is not about the avalanche. This story isn't about Walker either, but rather the person who was lying next to him for eternity.
The reason she came to light was because of her granddaughter's husband had been killed in the avalanche.
Mary Jane Green, her name etched on a crumbling, fragile piece of concrete. Though her marker is modest, her story is cemented in history. Marilyn Quincy, with the Snohomish County Black Heritage Committee, learned of Mary Jane in this library.
What I did was I go over to the newspapers and I just started going through, and when I saw her picture, I went, oh. And then I read the article, and it was just fascinating.
Mary Jane was 109 years old when the Everett-Herald published the article on May 5th, 1911, a time when the average life expectancy for a woman was just 53 years. Her long life expanded across several founding moments in American history. Born in Tennessee in 1802, when Thomas Jefferson was the third president of the United States and primary author of the Declaration of Independence. Mary Jane was alive during the Louisiana Purchase in 1803, when the U.S. paid France for 828,000 square miles of land west of the Mississippi River. She predates the Lewis and Clark expedition beginning in 1804, before the land that would later become Washington State was even established. She was a senior citizen when the American Civil War ended in 1865.
She was in her 60s when slavery ended.
Her age alone was worthy of making the local headline, but it's her recollection of her long life in her own words that pulls the reader in, starting with her picture.
And she reminds you of a strong woman, you know. She's got strong features.
This article is the only known record of Mary Jane sharing her personal story. She'd smile as she talked about her devotion to the Christian faith, but she also reflected on the deepest wounds of her past, being sold as a slave 3 times. The article says she recollects that her first master was Charles Burton, that owned her mother. Her family were divided on the auction block in those dark days of slavery. Where her father went, she is not able to tell.
She talked about her slave owners, and one of them, I don't think he was very good, because she said he was born for hell, and that's where he was.
The U.S. Census from April 15th, 1910 shows Mary Jane had 3 children, but she was unsure if they were still living. The census reveals she couldn't read or write, but before this data collection, she somehow managed to find her granddaughter, Sarah Walker, who lived in Everett, Washington with her husband, Louis. Mary Jane moved from Kansas City, Missouri to live with them in 1907.
Well, you think about the extraordinary distance that she traveled to. I mean, there's the time and the distance, and I think we don't think of people as being as mobile as they were that far back, but I mean, people were really going through huge journeys.
From their home at 3105 Everett Avenue, Mary Jane walked 7 blocks unassisted every Sunday to Second Baptist Church, even in her old age, until she was bedridden after a falling downstairs.
And right up to the end, that was, you know, when they were talking to her and she was in bed, she was talking about the Lord.
Just how did the newspaper find out about the centenarian? Well, a reporter came to Sarah's home to talk to her about the community's kindness after losing her husband in the avalanche. It was there the reporter found Mary Jane sitting in bed, willing to share what she remembered in all her years.
And you wish that you had more of her words talking about these things. It's a miracle that we have what we have, though.
Mary Jane died at 110 years old in May 1912, holding that record as the oldest resident in Washington until the year 2015.
She cemented her own by giving that interview and having all her wonderful words and having that picture taken of her, and I feel like it's nice to honor that. You know, she took her place.
But her place in 2025 is growing frail, just as the marker above her grave. Modest as her legacy may be, historians share her story, so her history, this American history, isn't buried away.
Because there are people out there right now trying to erase history. You know, they're saying, oh, slavery wasn't bad, or it really didn't happen. I think it's really, really important that these things are noted, memorized, and passed on.
Frankie Thompson, Fox 13 News.